I'm excited.
Yeah, let's do this.
Great.
I see people joining us now. We received some questions actually prior to our conversation, and we're just really, really excited to get started.
Great.
Awesome. Let's do this.
Okay.
So, hi everyone. I'm Ilana Frank. I am the CEO of Jewish Fertility Foundation. Like many of us in the infertility space, it is personal for me as well. I suffer from infertility, and today I have 3 children. When I started my journey, it was really, really hard. It was lonely. I was actually living in a foreign country. It was about 12 years ago. I thought I was the only one in the world going through this. I guess the internet was a little bit different back then. And I had no idea how to talk about it with my family, with my friends. And I honestly, being in a new country, like I didn't even know where to turn in terms of a doctor. And I knew something wasn't right with my husband and I thought, you know, you get married, you have sex, you have babies. And I just felt like something was wrong early on. I was able to go to a doctor. They put me on Clomid. I for sure thought I was going to get pregnant. I didn't. I did end up confiding in my aunt who worked in the medical system in Israel where I was. And she's like, you got to go to this doctor. I ended up going to this doctor's basement for months. It's not so crazy in Israel. There are private practices with respected doctors, but it was just bizarre. We were doing really, really weird things, but I had nobody to talk to or nobody to really run it by. And eventually, after about 1.5 years, I was able to see another doctor who finally looked at me and diagnosed me, and my tubes were blocked. I was never going to get pregnant other ways. And luckily, I was able to have 2 children in Israel via IVF. And when I came back to America with 2 little kids was really the first time I felt comfortable just talking about it with anybody. And what I noticed in America is that people were paying more money than I had to, living in a socialized country or where they offer socialized medicine. And I was really surprised. And so we were able to start this organization. We started in Atlanta, and we were able to bring it to Cincinnati last year. We're really, really excited about this. Personally, while I was, for the past 5 years, I continued to struggle in America. So I also had the experience of trying to want another baby in America. And I was very, very lucky. About 2 years ago, I received a donated embryo, and I was able to finish growing my family. So yeah, I mean, I could go on and on about me, but that's not why we're here. So,
but it's a great story, and congratulations. That's wonderful.
Thank you. So what does JFF do? Jewish Fertility Foundation is a very community-focused organization, and we do 3 main things. One is we help in terms of financial assistance. So in Cincinnati, we are partnering with clinics like yours to offer fertility grants. And we do offer fertility grants of up to $7,500 in Cincinnati. In addition, we offer some clinic discounts. Plus, we offer a $5,000 interest-free loan because sometimes the expenses are, we'll get into that in a second, but expenses are beyond the $7,500. And we want to make sure that our clients are really able to pay the fees. Also, we do not provide grants for medicine at this time. So while money is very, very important, we also understand that the emotional stress associated with infertility, the roller coaster, and sometimes it's tough with your partner. I mean, there's so many factors. Sometimes it's tough with your family, or if you're experiencing secondary infertility, it's just hard. So what we offer additionally in Cincinnati are free support groups open to anybody regardless of religious background. Of course, today during COVID, they are virtual, easily accessible, and we work with infertility specialists. You don't have to sit in a support group and kind of explain where you're at. It's just very clear. And many of our infertility therapists also have been through infertility, so that's an added bonus. Also in the support arena, we offer a fertility buddy program. So I know my husband, honestly, he just didn't get what I was going through. We're on different pages. I didn't want to talk to him at certain points, and I had wished that there was somebody who understood it. They weren't necessarily my therapist. They weren't necessarily my friend. It was somebody who's been there and is now here for me. And that's what we call our fertility buddies. It's a program where you sign up, again, free of charge. Doesn't matter if you're Jewish or not. We're open to everybody. And it's this, you're with this person throughout your journey. A lot of times, even when people do get pregnant, there still is that feeling of vulnerability. People are still scared. Sometimes, you know, if they've had losses previously, and we want a person there, you know, holding their hand along the way. And then the last piece of what we offer are educational trainings. We help sometimes people when they're starting out at all different phases of their journey through panel conversations. And we also help people with a program called Loving Someone with Infertility, which we're hopefully going to bring to Cincinnati soon. And basically, like, if your parents are asking, you know, what do I say? What don't I say? How can I be supportive and love you while you're going through infertility? This is kind of like the tips and tools of what to do. So again, in summary, we offer funding, we offer emotional support, and educational training. So today, we're super, super excited. Dr. Scheiber has been with us since the beginning of opening JFF Cincinnati. He is on our medical advisory council. And what that means is he is working with other doctors nationally to help evaluate the applicants that we receive for funding purposes. So if you're applying through this clinic for a grant, he will not be evaluating your application because that's really just not fair. But other doctors will absolutely be taking a look. So Dr. Scheiber, we are super duper excited you're here. And your listeners tonight have some questions for you. We love getting to understand that our doctors are actually people. I think sometimes, I mean, we always call, I don't know if you guys talk among yourselves, but there's this thing like a God complex. You bring babies into our world. I mean, there is God, but there is also medicine. And sometimes it gets, you know, it overlaps. But anyway, we want to understand that you're a normal person, potentially just like us. So let's start. Where did you go to school? Where did you get your training?
Great. Well, first off, let me just, you know, thank you again, and just kudos to JFF. I think so exciting to be involved, and I'm so pleased to be part of this program. Many of our patients know, along with a couple other great organizations in towns like Parental Hope and Gift of Life, JFF has just been super supportive in doing outreach and helping our patients, you know, achieve their goals in ways that they otherwise might not have been able to do. And I think we've already had our first 2 pregnancies since launching JFF so shortly ago. So that's just awesome. And it's folks like you that are willing to share your journey and, you know, speak out and give a helping hand to folks along the way, not only financially, but as you said, the support groups that you've offered. I know a lot of my previous patients are part of your fertility buddies programs. Everybody's finding those super useful. Again, with COVID, unfortunately, we're all, you know, it is what it is, where we're stuck and what's going on. But I know the online support groups have been wonderful as well. So we're just super pleased. I know my partners, Dr. Burwinkle, Dr. Awadala, Dr. O'Leary, we're all super thrilled to be partnering with you guys towards this important thing for you know, trying to help our patients achieve their goals, you know, with your aid. So thank you for having me. So I'll try not to be like the debates and not answer your questions. I'll try and go right to the questions. And,
let's do it.
And if a fly lands on my head, somebody tell me. Somebody wave and let me know. Yes. But so I did a large part of my training out in California. I did my undergraduate at Stanford University in California, and then stayed in the Bay Area. And I went to graduate school actually twice at the University of California, Berkeley. I have a degree in public health and also a master's in health and medical sciences from Berkeley, and finished medical school at UCSD. I'm sorry, at UCSF for medical school, UC San Francisco. And then I went down to UC San Diego for my OBGYN residency training. And after that, I actually was associated with the Public Health Service and worked overseas for a couple of years. Treating some underserved populations in other parts of the world, which was super fascinating, a great time, wonderful experience for my wife, and at that time I had two of my three awesome daughters with us. And following that, came back, and that was our journey to Cincinnati. I came out here for fellowship in the 90s, and just such a great town. My wife and I just loved it here so much that we just ended up staying put. So, so that was great. But it goes to show a lot of people sort of don't really know what a reproductive endocrinologist or understand what our training is. So as you can tell from that list of things, a standard journey is 4 years of college, 4 years of medical school, 4 years of OBGYN residency. And a lot of people don't realize we are a subspecialty, a board certified subspecialty as reproductive endocrinologists of OBGYN, and then a 3-year fellowship. So really it's 15 years after high school minimum of training to have the privilege of working with our patients the way we do.
Wow. That's very impressive. I didn't even know those things. What was your favorite country that you volunteered in?
Oh gosh. So most of what I did was in a small part of the world a lot of people have never heard of, called Micronesia, which was part of the old U.S. Trust territories in the Pacific Islands. So if you think of Guam as sort of the largest recognizable area nearby, but we were in the country of Palau for most of that, and Yap, Tinian, Saipan, Rota, all in and along there. So it was a very interesting time, and a lot of people that know me or people that have seen the back of my laptop as I talk across the table at the office with them know that I'm a huge scuba fan and big scuba diver, and Palau happens to be Scuba Magazine's #1 dive spot in the world for about 10 years running. So that was being there, not only enjoying the people and the work I was doing, but the opportunity to scuba dive was phenomenal.
Amazing. Thank you. So why did you become a reproductive endocrinologist? Why this area?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I mean, it kind of found me. I wasn't looking for it particularly. I mean, I knew that I wanted to do, after medical school, I was quite sure that I wanted to do women's health. And when I started medical school, I thought I might actually want to do orthopedics. That's kind of what I had in mind, which actually has a lot of similarities to OBGYN in terms of clinic and surgery, you know, taking care of patients, both short-term and long-term. So there's a lot of similarities there. But my wife, who of course knows me better than anybody in the world, said, "You would be the best OBGYN. You should totally do this." And I'm like, no, it's not really what I had in mind until I did my first rotation. And I just loved OBGYN right off the bat in medical school. And I was, you know, very content and enjoying my OBGYN residency, and figured that's what I would do, would just be general OBGYN. But during that time, we were very lucky. The program where I trained had probably the world's most famous reproductive endocrinologist, Dr. Sam Yin, who unfortunately passed away a few years ago, but was sort of the grandfather of our field, was one of my mentors. And I just got more involved in working there, and with some fantastic people on staff at that program. And at that time, we were just starting our family, and I realized all of a sudden what it meant to have your own kids, and what that means. And what it meant to my wife and to me, you know, as both individuals and as a couple, and how blessed we were. And once I saw those embryos under the microscope for the first time, I was like, that is cool. I want to do that. So I started pursuing that. Like I said, I had a couple-year break in between, but after my OBGYN residency, I had decided to go ahead with a reproductive endocrine fellowship. In fact, I already decided before we left, but we took those 2 years and then came back to the fellowship.
Wow, that's amazing.
So it was exciting.
That is pretty exciting. What's your favorite part of your day? You know, you go through so many pieces, like you said, in surgery, but also seeing clients or patients. What do you enjoy the most?
You know, gosh, it's a long time ago. One of my daughters was doing a project for, like, you know, kind of career day or whatever, and she was kind of, you know, interviewing people, and she said, you know, "Daddy, what do you think the coolest job in America is?" You know, I kind of thought about it for a minute. I said, "I think actually I have it." I'm not sure, but I'm pretty sure I do have it. So I think that we have so many good parts of our day. Of course, the hours are very long. Our patients all have seen us on Saturday and Sunday, and, you know, Christmas morning and Thanksgivings and Father's Days and everything else. So to do what we do properly, obviously, is kind of a 24/7 type of job. But You know, I think we get to interact with some patients at a very important and intimate time in their lives with something that's super important to them, and at that point in their life, it's probably the most important thing they have going on. And oftentimes we sort of get to know our patients much better, I think, than a lot of doctors. Like if you're just seeing someone once a year for a checkup or something, I think we really have this wonderful opportunity to interact very closely with our patients and get to know them a little bit, because we're seeing them, you know, sometimes even 2 or 3 times a week for, you know, a couple, 3 months at a time.
Right.
So as you know, I'm sure. So, you know, I think getting to know the patients and you know, as people, in addition to parents and patients, is very, very true. I think it's nice to be there at a time when, of course, the highs in our field are super, super high, right? So as you said, I mean, all kidding aside, you know, I tell the staff, I say, we're pretty lucky. You walk in, there's not many places you can go to work and help create life every day. So it certainly is a very unique and special position. I think probably one of my favorite things is, you know, going in at that first OB scan, and when the couple sees the heartbeat for the very first time, I still cry a lot of times about that. It's just amazing to see that, and to know what our patients have gone through, and to be able to get them to that point and realize you helped them achieve that dream. It's fantastic.
Here, I love that.
Yeah.
I
And
love
of course,
it.
it's mostly our staff. It's a huge group effort. You know, the staff is so important, and for every minute I spend with a patient, you know, they're spending an hour. So, and you know, it goes for everybody, the people in the lab where the magic happens, and you know, the billing people, and the you know, front office people, and the medical assistants, everybody that helps the patients out. You know, we get a lot of the glory, like you said, especially, you know, from our patients, but those folks have been through. Now it's really our team that makes everybody so special where we are.
So thank you. So let's get into a little bit of, I guess, the biology. Some of us are new to fertility treatments. What is involved with the IVF procedure, with IUI procedures as well?
Yeah. So, you know, let's start with IUI, because that's the simple part, and work our way forward. So I think one thing that's really important to recognize is that the sooner people come in for treatment, the more likely it is we're able to help them with relatively non-invasive, super simple, relatively inexpensive types of treatments. So, you know, my plea would be, if people out there are thinking of coming in, to go ahead and come in, because our chances of being able to help you early and cheaply are much, much higher, you know, the sooner we see people and the younger.
I'm going to interrupt you for a second. This is a question. When is, like, at what point is early? So if somebody's trying for how long and not getting pregnant, when would you recommend them coming in? Right.
So I think it depends a lot on what else is going on and what their history is. So if a woman has, you know, very irregular periods, you know, I mean, she's not on birth control pills, she's not on any medications, and she's only having a period every 45 to 60 days, that kind of thing, there's no point in waiting at all. I mean, those people should just come in right away. People who had a history of infertility in a previous marriage or something, which we see a lot, you know, they should obviously come in right away. You know, we say for women under the age of 32 to 35 that a year of trying, if everything else is okay, is sort of okay, but we would prefer 6 to 8 months, really. And for women over 35, it's definitely 6 months. You know, if you're not there, just come in, because people really don't realize the impact that age has on fertility. And between 32 and 35, there's a drop. Between 35 and 38, there's a big drop. And over 38, you know, 38 to 40, it's huge. And 40 to 42, we're starting to get up against the 8 ball a little bit. So sooner is definitely better. And, you know, also the same thing, if you've been with a OBGYN, we're very lucky in Cincinnati. We have great generalists here that we work with and everything. But, you know, if you've been through 3 or 4 treatment cycles, Clomid, simple stuff with your OB, and things aren't getting where you need to be, it's time to seek help from a specialist, you know, right away. But simple treatments like IUI, like a typical treatment for, you know, if someone's an ovulatory PCO, sometimes all they need is 5 days a month of a simple oral drug, and that does the trick. You know, those are kind of the easiest, you know, best case scenarios for patients, which a lot of our patients fall into what we call unexplained infertility, meaning, you know, we don't know exactly what's going on, or there's maybe some mild endometriosis, a little bit of a male factor, that sort of thing. simple treatments, what we call superovulation with intrauterine insemination, or IUI, can be do the trick very, very nicely. And what that typically involves, again, days 3 through 7 of the menstrual cycle, so only 5 days out of the month, simple oral tablets. Most of our patients come in around day 11, day 12 for an ultrasound. At that point, we're evaluating the growth of what we call follicles, which are the egg sacs on ultrasound. When it looks like the eggs are mature and ready to be fertilized, we'll often have people take a little trigger shot, which helps drop the egg so we know exactly when ovulation is occurring. And then for an IUI, what happens is that the husband would provide us with a specimen, or for some couples, donor sperm is thawed. And then we prepare that specimen with a sperm wash. And then right when the woman's ovulating, we use a very soft, very flexible, small tube. Most women say it's not a lot worse than a pap smear, that kind of thing. And we place the sperm right into the opening of the fallopian tubes, right where the eggs are dropping in. So we're kind of getting more eggs, better eggs, get the timing just right, and get the sperm a big head start towards where they need to be. And an average time frame for that to work can honestly be up to 3 to 4 tries, that kind of thing, for a lot of couples. So it's not uncommon. It takes a little bit of hanging in there. Fortunately, for a lot of couples, that's all it takes, and it works pretty efficiently. And at least in our clinic, a round of Clomid or Letrozole with ultrasound, trigger shot, sperm wash, IUI is about in the neighborhood of $700 to $800. So it's more affordable than a lot of people expect, and we're lucky because we do have a big volume. We can sort of distribute that over a lot of patients, so our prices tend to be in the bottom few percent of what's found around the country. So so that's accessible for a lot of patients. Side effects from the medications can certainly be there, but tend to not be terrible for those 5 days. Hot flushes, headaches, occasionally some mood changes, some change in the menstrual cycle or cramping, a little bit like that. And twins are really not profound. It's, we're looking at about anywhere between 6 and 9%, which is certainly much higher than the 1 to 2% you might have given your family history. But it also means 94 to 95% of our patients just have singletons with these types of treatments, and anything more than twins with these type of treatments is less than 1 or 2% at most. So that's often a starting point for many patients.
And how much would the medicine come to? I mean, I know you can't say for
Clomid Letrozole is generic. It's usually either $4.99 or $9.99 at most places around here, anyways. And the trigger shot, runs about $80 to $90. So that's all in for medicines for a low-tech IUI cycle.
Right.
Now, if you get into some more of the fertility injection cycles, that kind of thing, where we're using the injectable fertility drugs in addition to IUI, those are going to run more expensive because the fertility medications for that can run upwards of $1,000 or so. In that ballpark. And again, but with all the extra monitoring, the injection monitoring, trigger shots, sperm wash, insemination, everything's about $1,100 or $1,200 roughly here for an IUI cycle, plus the medications. So that is oftentimes the next step beyond the oral drugs with IUI would be injectable drugs with IUI. And for years and years and years, we did tons of those. I think all around the country and certainly around the world, people are doing fewer of those than we used to. Reasons being that success rates do roughly double compared to the oral drugs each month, but the multiples way more than double. So with the injectable drugs, that's where we really, worry if we're into 8 to 12% for threes and disasters beyond that. So, we have to be very cautious with that. Obviously that's a concern for all of our patients and for us as physicians as well, because we really do want the best outcome. And I'll make a plug along those lines. Everyone's like, I'd say 80% of the patients that walk in our door, we want twins, doc. Twins would be great. One and done, super efficient, let's do that. But a singleton is really what we're after. We accept twins as a kind of complication or a risk of what we do in order to boost people's chances to being there. And when they go great, the twins are awesome, and God bless all the twins that are out there, and even the triplets and beyond. And we've been lucky that a lot of our patients are blessed with healthy families made up of multiples and that kind of stuff. But there's also a lot of families that have been through heartache with, you know, even twins with risks of preterm labor, gestational diabetes, preeclampsia for the mom, and, you know, nursery stays for the babies. And with 3 and more, it's almost a sure thing that you're going to have, you know, run into some of those issues. So we're always after one. And, you know, the IVF trends have reflected that tremendously in Europe and then in this country over the last several years as well, in terms of a drastic reduction in the number of embryos that we're putting in. So
we used to put in 3, like in my early day, 3. Both of my first boys, who are now almost 9 and 7, they both started out as twins.
Oh gosh,
and, around 8 to 10 weeks, each one of them diminished, or so they say.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's very different than when I started out in terms of what they're offering today.
Absolutely. So, and then to move on to answer your last question about the IVF, again, it really, compared to the old days, IVF has gotten so much easier. All of the medications now are subcutaneous, so we use almost no intramuscular medications anymore for shots.
Wow.
And most of our progesterone, 80-90% of what we use in the way of progesterone is vaginal. So those big painful oil shots we're using only occasionally and only every few days when we do use them, for the most part these days. And a lot of the protocols have changed. So those of you that may have gone through in the past, you know, for years and years, we did what's called a long protocol down regulation with Lupron, which had 10, 15, 20 days of shots before we even started the IVF treatments. Oftentimes had more in the way of emotional side effects, that kind of stuff. We've gotten rid of the Lupron. 80-90% of our cycles are done without that now. Most women average only somewhere between about 8 and 11 days worth of subcutaneous injections. So not much bigger than an allergy shot or an insulin shot that a diabetic would take. During that time, again, the ultrasound monitoring is the same as it would be for an IUI cycle. Ultrasounds, only with IVF, we usually do a little bit of blood work, monitor the growth of the follicles, hormone levels. When things look ready, take your trigger like before. And then rather than doing an IUI so many hours later, we would go ahead and set that patient up for the egg retrieval. And at least the way we do it at our office, you know, every places vary, but we did over 600 or 700 retrievals in our office each of the last several years. So, you know, the team's very efficient, very safe. It turns out it's the total time that the procedure actually takes is about 10 or 12 minutes for most patients. It's all done through the vagina, no incisions, no scars, no sutures. And the way we do it, there's no general anesthesia. We do start an IV for most patients, give them just a little bit of comfort medication, similar to wisdom teeth, that kind of thing. So they can't drive home that day, but 90% of our patients go back to work the next day. So it's very well tolerated. And so with that, we take the eggs out, and then the husband gives us sperm, or we have the donor sperm that day available. And under the microscope in the test tube dish, and this is where the in vitro part of IVF comes in, we fertilize the eggs with the sperm in the test tube dish. And that can be done one of 2 different ways, just through what's called standard fertilization, where we just put them in the test tube dish and let them play nice together. And then for sperm, where the structural testing on the sperm suggests that it may be difficult for the sperm to bind or penetrate the egg, we do a technique called ICSI, where we actually inject a single sperm directly into the egg to help achieve fertilization. So the next day, we know about how many fertilized eggs or embryos are available. And then we kind of watch for several days. And for each patient, it's going to be a little different. For some patients, it's 2 or 3 days. For most of our patients these days, it's 5 or 6 days, watching to see how the embryos progress and grow. And then one of several things can happen at that point. A lot of our patients get a fresh embryo transfer from that same cycle. And again, in women under 35, we're almost always only putting in 1 embryo these days, and never more than 2. So these, you know, kind of 3s and 4s and 5s that we used to run into, we've seen less. And in fact, we put in a single embryo, your chance of twins is less than Clomid. So, you know, that's come a huge, huge way, what's called ESET or ESETs in the community, elective single embryo transfers. And then many people choose to freeze all the embryos depending on what the hormonal quality of the cycle is and what the lining looks like. Sometimes we do better freezing all the embryos that make it to that day 5 or day 6 to the blastocyst stage, wait 2 weeks till the woman has her period and use that cycle to put the embryos back in. And then we have a number of patients these days as well that are electing or kind of opting for genetic or health reasons to test the embryos prior to putting them back in. That technique's called PGT or PGD or PGS, or depending on whose alphabet soup you're using. There's lots of alphabet soup in our field. And with that, what happens is the embryos that make it out to day 5 or day 6, our lab staff takes just a very tiny pinch of cells from what's called the trophectoderm, the very outer eggshell, and then we freeze those embryos. And again, during those 2 weeks when we're waiting for a woman's cycle to start again, we run genetic analysis on those embryos. And this day and age, we get all 46 chromosomes back. So before that embryo goes back, we can already screen for many of the common genetic things, 13, 15, 18, 21 trisomies, for missing chromosomes, extra chromosomes, as well as for single gene disorders, which I know JFF has been great about helping to screen and do screening, which you may want to mention or bring up. But these comprehensive genetic panels prior to IVF, where we can screen for Tay-Sachs and sickle cell and Gaucher's disease and thalassemias and all sorts of recessive diseases where each parent might carry the disease and not know it or be unaffected, but if they both give it to the baby, it could be lethal to the baby. So we're also able to test for those diseases to make sure that the embryos that are going back are not affected with lethal diseases. So lots of things can happen. And then best case scenario with IVF, you deliver the baby from that first embryo transfer. And if we're lucky, we have frozens that we were able to freeze that are left over, and you can come back and you can have baby 2 or baby 3 down the road without having to go through all the injections and treatments and egg retrievals and everything. So it's way less expensive and way easier on a woman's body to go through for the frozen cycles. And pregnancy rates these days are actually a touch better with frozens than with fresh. So we're doing awesome with our frozen embryos, due mostly to some new and amazing techniques that the lab's doing, called vitrification. And so we do all of that. And the other really nice thing about that, it literally freezes time for these women. So you come in when you're 34, maybe for your first baby, and by the time you have your pregnancy, deliver, breastfeed, ready to go again, maybe you're 37. And then for baby 3, maybe you're 40. So whereas a 40-year-old might have a 40% miscarriage rate using her own eggs for a fresh round of IVF, her eggs are actually frozen in time at 34 years of age when her miscarriage rate's only 20% or 25%. So there really is literally a way to freeze time with what we do with the embryos, which is phenomenal. It's just amazing to me.
Absolutely. Thanks for that. So we got a bunch of questions while you were talking. One of the questions first, before I ask a question, you did mention genetic screening, and it's really important, especially in the Jewish community. We carry a lot of genetic diseases. One of the organizations that we partner with is JScreen. We offer all of our grantees a free JScreen, and they offer about, I think it's like 280 different genetic disorders that they're testing for today. So I would just give a shout out to them in addition to whatever tests you use as well. So we did get a question about why are you, or doctors in general, moving away from oil progesterone? Is that a you guys thing?
Because it hurts. No, I think that there's been, since the mid 90s, certainly the early 2000s, there's been a move away from progesterone and oil to other forms of progesterone. There's been more than half a dozen huge IVF trials now with 1,200, 1,400 people, that kind of thing, looking at the differences. And it's clear that the pregnancy rates are the same. So certainly, if, some patients, the advantage to progesterone and oil is it can be done once a day instead of 2 or 3 times a day, which some of the other preparations require. Some patients, there's an inevitable small amount these days of, mess and, and discomfort from the vaginal insert. Some patients aren't as comfortable doing that. But for most patients, really the worst part of their IVF cycle was the progesterone and oil shots. They tend to leave big red lumps and bumps. They're hard to administer yourself. So, usually a partner has to be there. So, if you're a consultant and you're traveling away from your husband 5 days a week and that kind of thing, it may be very difficult as a woman to give yourself that shot, or vice versa if your husband travels. Or
if you're a single mom by choice.
Or if you're a single mom by choice, absolutely. it can be tough for all those situations. So it's really ease of administration and reduction in pain and convenience. And there's been lots of studies looking at patient preferences for progesterone and oil versus vaginal progesterone, and vaginal progesterone uniformly wins. I've never seen a trial that came out where it didn't come out on top. So it's really for patient convenience and comfort for the most part. Efficacy seems to be just the same. Good
to know. Talk to us about, I don't know what this means, intralipids with IVF. Pro, con?
So not that there aren't some medical degree doctors out there doing those things. And
what is it? Explain to me what, I don't know. I've never heard of this before.
It's largely done for recurrent pregnancy loss patients, and it has to do with sort of modulating the immune system. Those guys have lots of babies, and those women have lots of babies from their studies, but not with controls or appropriate safety precautions or anything else. So I tend to not do things that don't have proven benefit that might have potential harm. So that's not one of the things that we do. If our patients are seeing somebody else and they want that as part of their protocol, I personally won't prescribe them, but we can arrange for them to, you know, as long as somebody else is prescribing it, we can arrange to have the home healthcare people come and administer it or do things. Same thing with IVIG and those types of treatments. You know, there's a spectrum. There's people that don't believe in any immune stuff, and there's people that believe that all reproductive failure is 100% immune stuff. And I check and believe in more immune stuff than probably a lot of the country, but I'm definitely way to the short side of intralipids and IVIG and that kind of thing.
Got it. Okay, I like this question. Are there any old wives' tales about getting pregnant that are actually true?
Sure. If everything is working, having sex greatly increases your chances of getting pregnant. So,
all right, yeah, that's a tricky one.
So, you know, I think we have. I tell my wife, like, you know, we definitely should buy stock in Dole, because I think every patient that's walked in the door for the last 5 years has been on pineapple core. So again, having grown up and trained in California, I do a lot of things that a lot of folks out here might not do. I you know, send a lot of patients for acupuncture. I do a lot of supplements, and, you know, we pay attention to diet and exercise. We offer pregnancy yoga. We have massage, you know, things available and whatnot. So I think there are a lot of things out there that really help. You know, hanging your feet from the ceiling, or, you know, inverting your hips on 5 pillows on the headboards, and you know, waiting, not having any intercourse for 3 weeks until the very day you think you're ovulating. All these things really probably, you know, don't do very much good. So I'm trying to think of some ones that actually do work. Maybe throw some out there. I'll let you know what I think about them.
I see one, McDonald's French fries. I don't know about that one.
There you go.
So I'll move to another question. Alcohol and caffeine, yay or nay during treatment?
Yeah, it's well after 5 on a Thursday. I'd love a drink. Thanks for asking.
I know, right?
So during treatment, again, I tend to be a moderation guy. You know, some people are certainly more strict, but I would say from both those standpoints, certainly responsible. You want to be responsible, and optimizing your general health as much as you can is good, not only for getting pregnant, but leading into the pregnancy and whatnot. I don't require people to be completely abstinent. I know a lot of colleagues in my field do recommend that. I typically tell people 3 to 4 drinks split up over the course of the week. So not 4 in one night is actually worse than 1 a night, 4 nights apart, that kind of thing. So, you know, and in the second half of the cycle, after an IUI or after an embryo transfer, that kind of thing, I recommend that the woman not have any alcohol at all. Same thing for the guys. I mean, again, don't forget the guys are half the equation, and you know, reduction in alcohol, cigarettes, other tobacco products, you know, optimizing men's health. We don't want to forget about that as being a super important part of the equation as well. So I tell the guys same thing, you know, 3 to 4 drinks a week, you know, spread out. You know, trying to keep a handle on that, in addition to the other healthy lifestyle and some, you know, potentially supplemental vitamins for guys whose motility is a little low or morphology is a little off as well. Same thing for caffeine. I would say 1 to 2 caffeinated beverages a day. And by that, I typically would mean coffee or tea. I'm just like I think what we call pop in the Midwest, what we call soda in California, is just the kiss of death for our country. I think that's responsible for like half the healthcare problems in our country. So not pop and not caffeine and from pop. So I'm by no means endorsing that at all. And even diet, I don't like while you're trying to conceive, because I think there's too much artificial junk in there that's not good for you. So, and it fools your body and your body's natural insulin system. So I would just avoid all pop altogether. But 1 to 2, if you want a cup of coffee in the morning and an espresso at 3, I think that's probably okay. In fact, there's been some studies looking at decaffeinated coffee increasing the risk of miscarriages if it's not water processed, if it's chemically processed. So, like I said, all things in moderation. I wouldn't want you having 6 red eye triple espressos at each day, but 1 to 2 caffeinated beverages a day I'm typically okay with.
Well, thank you. All right, we have time for one last question. And I'm sorry if we didn't get to all of your questions for those of you who are listening, but I think this one is really relevant. And when people reach out to me, this is one of the things that my first doctor in Israel, who ultimately gave me 2 children, told me. He's like, be very careful of going online. You can really go down a hole just by all the digging and research. And what do you feel about that? Is the internet trustworthy when it comes to learning about options?
Yes, so our website is extremely trustworthy. Outside of that, I would avoid it. So I actually have a colleague that has a mug on her desk that I love that says, "Please do not confuse your Google search with my medical degree."
Yep.
And I think there's a lot of that. Now, having said that, I love a great educated conversation. I enjoy, as part of the challenging part of our job that I love, is discussing different treatment options and hearing people's ideas. And maybe they went to another clinic and it worked for them somewhere else, and I want to learn what they did that's different, those sorts of things. So I love a good intellectual conversation, but what's typically causes more stress than help for our patients is, well, my sister's cousin's hairdresser told me that if I just do this, that I'm going to get pregnant, or I'm not pregnant because I did this, is even worse, because then you have that guilt. Yep. And I think, unfortunately in this day and age, you can post anything you want online. So, it's a lot of it's completely untested and unfounded, and some of it can be harmful. Online's great for support groups, perfect, sure. Great place for online. Educational websites from, reputable fertility practices, probably another great place to get information from. And there's nothing wrong with doing, a Google search on the NIH, publication website or something to find out, clinical trials, what's new and that kind of thing. But just Googling, fertility is probably going to lead you down as much of a rabbit hole as anything. But it is the information age. That's why we're adopting a patient portal so that we can communicate electronically with patients. There's, there's a lot of good information out there. We're doing, during COVID, we're doing teachings and telemedicine and education days online. So there's a great use for online, utility, but sometimes the basic Google searches, as you said, can lead you down that deep dark hole that usually if you just ask, we can dispel those myths.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much. We learned a lot about you. We learned a lot about treatment options, and hopefully our listeners learned a little bit about Jewish Fertility Foundation in Cincinnati as well. We are recording this, and Dr. Scheiber is going to save it on IGTV. So if you came in late, you can go back and listen through. Again, thank you. Please, if you need our support, both financial or emotional, we are here for you. So we hope you have a lovely evening and stay in touch.
Thank you.
Dr.
I'll
Scheiber.
put in a pitch too, that JFF, in order to help fund all these patients, it's got to come from somewhere. So if any of you are feeling lucky enough or blessed enough to have something a little extra to help support JFF, it goes back into the fertility community and helping make people's dreams come true. And I'm going to ask you a quick question too, because none of my tech savvy daughters are home at the moment.
Uh-oh.
If I press end, can I still save, or is there a different button to save?
Yes, you're going to press end, and then
Yep.
something's going to pop up, and it's going to ask you if you want to save it to IGTV.
Perfect. Thanks, everybody. Have a good evening. Masks up in public and stay safe. Be well and be healthy.
Thank you.
Take
Bye-bye.
care. Thank you.